All right, so next up, we just want to do this application form um, for our website. Um, in terms of accessing the application form, I've got mine as an apply tab up here. So you can jump straight to it from any page. You might want yours only available from the profiles page. So, or you could have not just your profiles page, because as well as that, you've got your jobs page, which you can just. I'm not going to do a tutorial for that one. That's more about use what you've learned to create that in a way that you want to create it. From that jobs page, you'd have a list of jobs, which might be done in a similar way to how you've added just these headings and p tags. And then under that, you might want like an apply button for each one, which actually would just take you to the same page. So in this home one here, we talked about buttons, how you can add buttons in. Um, you know, straightforward to add buttons, and then you can just link it to this apply page, and they'd all go to the same one. You don't have to have a different form for every job. It'll just be the same one. And then you just design your form so that they have to maybe write in which job there is that they're interested in or something. Okay, so think about how you want the navigation of your page, your website to work. I've got mine as its own tab, so you can jump to it, whenever. Um, that's how it is. Do yours how you want. So let's go to our code. So similarly to the last video, what I did is I've created a blank page and deleted the content middle. So this div box where I had all the central content, I just emptied it out again. So if we look at the code for that, it's this page here. So yeah, I copied everything over, and then this content middle one just emptied all the stuff that was in there. Changed the H1 to apply, etc. Same as before. So yeah, what we need to add in now is this form. Okay, so before that, I might just want a little title. So give it another, maybe a H1. I know technically it might be a subheading, but I want it to be quite a big heading. So we'll just call it application form. Great, that's fine. And there it is. It's already picked up on the font because this is also a H1, and that uses that font. So it's just picking that up as well. Although even though it's in another div box actually, so let's just address that. So my content H1, there you go. I already have some CSS for that with padding around it as well actually, but yeah, you guys should be familiar enough with how that kind of works with the CSS by now to sort that out for yourselves. The main thing here is how to add the form. So let's go back to our code and our HTML, and underneath that H1, I'm going to add a form, and the tag for a form is, believe it or not, form. There you go. So we have to create the tag first, and then everything for that form goes in between. So the first thing within a form you need is called the label, and I'll create it first, and then you'll see what that is. So this is where our fields come in. So the first one we want is enter name, probably like that. Okay, so I've just save that, and we see what that is. Technically, that could be done as a p tag. It's just an enter name. There's nothing here that I can actually enter my name into. That's what comes next, and that we'll do it along the same line. You don't have to, but that's the way that I kind of like to do forms. And then that is called an input tag. Rather than just closing that, we need to keep going with this because we need to address the type, or the input type. And in this instance, it's going to be text, like that, in speech marks. So what this is to do with your data validation, really. So like, I want the user to input text into here. I don't want them to be able to enter numbers, for example, because you don't have numbers in your name normally, unless you're, I'm sure there's some people out there with numbers in their name. So yeah, we want them to enter text anyway. But yes, then there's other ones which we'll come to when we look at our other inputs. But for now, yeah, that one is text. So they'll only be able to enter text into there, which is fine, which is good. Next thing I want to give this is a name. So name equals, and I'm going to call it name because they're entering their name. Then I'm going to close that input tag. Now this name, technically we don't need this for what we're doing at the moment, but what this will address is if you wanted to sort of make this interactive with regards to using JavaScript, PHP, and that kind of thing, to address certain fields within your form in certain ways. So it's good practice to have it there, but at the moment we're not really going to address it. So, but we'll leave it in there for now because it's good to have it there. All right, so I'm going to save that. I'm going to refresh, and now I've got enter name, and I actually have a field where I can type stuff, which is great. Okay, if yours puts it next to it, actually, I think, let me just check my style sheet actually, because, yeah, there you go. This is all the stuff I was doing. This is, well, we'll do this together anyway. So I'll actually delete that. Obviously, I was practicing. Control save, sorry. So we'll delete that. So actually, the reality is it will look like that by default. Okay, which is fine for now. So yeah, you've got your label and your input. So let's come back to our HTML and type in the rest of them. So once you've done one, it's kind of a copy and paste job for the next one. So we'll copy that, paste it. The next one I'm going to put in is putting in their email address, and the fields that you use are going to be down to you, what's relevant to the form that you're creating. So the input type, yeah, it could be text, but we want them to specifically have to enter an email. So the type is email, and then that way they have to enter something that's in the format of an email, like such and such at such and such dot whatever. And then we're going to give it a name. We're going to call that email as well. All right, that's fine. So copy, next one down. An application form, you're going to need to contact, a contact number probably. That's fine. And then the input for that, for a telephone number, the type is TEL. And then we'll call it just number for the name. Okay, these names can be whatever you want. These have to be right. There's lots of different types. And you can look them up on W3 Schools, for example, look up all the different input types. There's loads of them. Let's copy that one. And we'll, these ones, you can just keep on going for whatever fields you need to enter. But also, because this is an application form, I wanted to put in this different type of input. So we're going to call this the application statement, because in an application form, you have to write almost like a cover letter or like a statement of why you're applying for the job. And for this, we're not actually going to use input. So I'm going to delete that. This is a different type of input field. And this one's called text area. All right. And then we don't give it a type. No, we don't give it a type. So we just give it a name. Just call it message. And then, yeah, that'll give us a closing tag for the text area bit. So we'll just save that and I'll show you what that looks like now. So you can see our form is, by default, they put themselves all next to each other. We're going to change how it looks in CSS, but just see the text area field is a bit bigger. You can actually, can make it bigger. So the idea is you can put a lot more information into that. Okay, so that's why we've used text area there. And then what we want is a button to submit it, once the user is finished. So for that, we just want to use an input. Give it an ID. I'll come back to the ID in a minute. The type is submit. And we are going to give it a value, but again, the value is to do with linking it up with your JavaScripts and PHPs, but it's good practice to put it in there. Just going to call it send form. It would help if I put equals and close that down and save that. So that will just create us an input button. Have I done this right? Let's check. Yeah, there we go. So we've got a submit button there, which will send the form. All right, so that's adding it in terms of HTML, but it doesn't look very nice. We want it to be, a nice big application form in the middle of our screen. So we can address that with the CSS, all right? But that's fine in terms of adding the content for the form. I'll come to my style sheet now. And what I need to start with is we're not addressing, we haven't made a div for this form. It's still within content M. So we could start with .content M, but I only have one form in my whole website, so I don't need to specify that information. I'm just going to type in form because it's just going to address any form tag in my website because I've only got one. The first thing I want to put in is a bit of padding. So if I just put in some padding, 50 pixels. You'll see again, it just pushes it away from the edges. I haven't addressed specifically left, right, top or bottom. I've just put padding, which puts it on the left, right, top and bottom, which is fine. So that's fine. I just want to sort of pad that out a bit. Next thing I'm going to do is the form label, okay, which as you remember is the text to tell you what to input. And on here, I'm going to put in display block. What that is going to do, it probably won't work immediately. Okay, no, it did. That's good. Is it there? You can see what it's done. It pushes it down to be on top of each other instead of side by side. Okay, which is what we wanted. So it's already starting to come together, which is good. And that will work for other HTML sort of tags as well, rather than just forms. If you use the display block, if they're next to each other, that will force them to go underneath each other. My other issue is that they're all squashed up right next to each other. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put a margin probably on the top, only a little bit, 10 pixels. Let's save that, and then there you go. That just puts a bit of space in between each one. Okay, spreads it out, but you can put that more if you want it more spread out, but that's up to you. Next, we've got the input. So we've done the label. Now we want to do the form inputs. That's where the user will type in their information. So again, we want display block because we want this to be all stacked on top of each other rather than side by side. Although, all that's going to do really is make sure the button's underneath because the display block there did most of the work. And what we can do is we can adjust like the width of it, for example. That looks really small. So if I change the width of that to 50%, what that's going to do is it's going to make this field 50% of the container that it's in, the div box that it's in, which is this content M. So you can see it goes to about halfway, which is fine. It does do the button as well, which is annoying, but we'll come back to that. And we can also adjust the height, which we're going to want to do. I'm not going to do percentage this time because I don't know what the height percentage is going to be much harder to work out. So I'm just going to do pixels, something like 30, probably be fine. Yeah, that'll do. You could obviously make it bigger again if you want. That's personal preference. You can also change things here like the background color and all sorts of other stuff. If you want to jazz up your form in terms of colors, then you can go for it. And also obviously on the form label, you can change things like the font and things as well. Also, I kind of want a bit of space. I don't like things squashed up together, as you can probably guess by now. I'm going to put this margin on there as well. And we'll look at that. So that, again, it just spaces things out. That's fine. Then we've got the text area. So form text area. That's one word. The width of that one, I'm going to make it 100% because I want that to be a nice big box. So that's 100%. Bear in mind it's not going right to the edge here because of that padding that I put on initially. Just bear that in mind. And also I want to change the height on that as well. a lot bigger, 300. Yeah, something like that. You might want them to do a big statement. Well, you make that bigger and it encourages them to write more in there. That's again depends on what you want. And again, I'm just going to put this margin in to make sure that that little bit of spacing is there. Grand. So now it's looking like a nice application form already. The only issue we just need to fix is the send form button, because it doesn't really stand out. It's the same kind of size as these boxes. I want it to be separate. I want to be able to customize this separately to these boxes. At the moment, whatever I do to these boxes, it does to the button, because it's also, if you remember, an input. So what we need to do in this HTML here, we need to separate it from our other input tags. And the way that we can do that is by giving it an ID. So what you do is, after the input there, where you would normally type in class if it was like a div, so we do ID equals, give it a name. I'm just going to call it submit. Okay, so now it's got its own ID, and you can do this for anything, an image, a paragraph, a heading, whatever. You need to give it an ID, and it can individually allow you to customize that one thing. Because if you've got lots of H1s within a div tag, but you do want to make them all different, give them different IDs, and then you can address that separately in the CSS. Okay, so that's an important thing. So now I've done that, I'll go to my style sheet. And now, normally when you address a class, you do dot, whatever the class name is. For an ID, it's hashtag, and then we gave it ID of submit. And that's going to address an ID, the hashtag. All right, so let's just, what do we want to do? Change the width. We don't want it to be 50%. We'll make it about 25. There you go, that makes it a bit smaller. We probably want to change the height. Something like 50, make it a bit chunkier. There you go, that's fine. We'll change the background color because it doesn't really stand out that much. Give it my gray color. There you go, it stands out against the white. But then obviously we've got the issue that the text color is, we can't really read it very well. The contrast isn't very good. So the text color is literally actually just the color. Right, and we want to make that white so it stands out as much as we can. And again, you can change the font, whatever. Okay, that's grand. So the other thing is I want to make this central. So actually what I can do is just go back to my original HTML and just give myself a center tag around just this one input. There we go. And then it just centers that. That is great. Okay, so basically done. I think one more thing. In CSS, with buttons, it's nice to have a hover effect over it. So again, we're addressing just the ID. So hashtag submit. And then to do the hover, we need one of them, and then hover. Great, same as what we did with previous buttons. Like up there, you can see, I've done this before actually, so I'll just take that. I want to have a transition duration and then change the color when you hover over it. So let's just save that, refresh, and there you go. It changes to that color when we hover over it, and you can see that 0.4 seconds to change color. So it's not instant, it's a nice little effect. All right, and then that is essentially the form. So you guys can just create that, modify the fonts, the colors, sizes, whatever you want to do for the form for your own websites. Okay, so hopefully that helps. In terms of making the form work at the moment, I think if we just push send form, it just refreshes the page, which is fine for now. We don't have to worry about that actually sending a form to someone. We don't have that information of who to send the form to. So it being like this is perfectly acceptable for the assignment. All right, so that's the form, and that is all for now.